Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. We're now getting a closer look at the NBC traffic stop made during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial.
This is Officer Jones, Kenosha Police. We're trying to figure out what's going on here, why you have a reporter or a producer following vehicles out here.
And could the historical Roe V Wade ruling be overturned? The Supreme Court hears arguments to reverse the famed abortion law. Plus, a defendant's chilling reaction to the news of his wife's death.
There was no verbal or emotional response. He just looked at me with really no response at all.
And later,
this kind of thing can happen anywhere, and sadly, it happened even in a sweet, quiet community like Oxford.
The latest on the deadly school shooting out of Oxford, Michigan. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. MSNBC was barred from the courthouse during Kyle Rittenhouse's trial after a freelance producer was caught following the bus carrying jurors. Now we're getting a look at the traffic stop. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with the video.
Brian, no one has been charged with a crime related to that producer following the jury bus. Kenosha police say that's because they pulled over James Morrison for running a red light, and that actually prevented any possible jury tampering. Take a look at this. This is the video released by Kenosha police. The police blurred Morrison's face before releasing that body camera video. Morrison is answering questions throughout it. Now, you may recall Judge Bruce Schrader, who presided over Rittenhouse's trial, called the incident a serious matter. At one point during the traffic stop, Morrison holds up letters he said the clerk of courts was going to give to the jurors, requesting an interview after the verdict. Morrison said booking producer Irene Bayon told him to follow the bus, and she speaks by phone to the officer.
I was being called by New York going, maybe these are people you need to follow, but I don't know. I was trying to...
You trying to what?
Just do what they told me to do.
New York told you to follow a vehicle?
Yes.
We were just trying to respectfully, just trying to see if it's possible to find any leads about the case, and so we were just keeping our distance, just to see like where people involved in the trial are positioned. By no means were we trying to get in contact with any of the jury members.
Now, I reached out to an NBC News spokesperson for a comment and to see whether Irene Bayon still worked at the network. No one responded to that email requesting a comment. Now, when this happened a couple of weeks ago, that NBC News spokesperson said Morrison never contacted or photographed the jurors and never intended to do so. The spokesperson said at the time that the network regretted the incident. Brian?
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is legal analyst Dina Dahl and Terry Austin. Dina, your reaction to this video, and why is the man's face blurred?
Well, my first reaction was good for them, because they did a great job of catching a car that was following a jury, in this very high profile case. They had no idea what the intent was behind the car. Now we know there was this reputable news agency behind it, but still, we have to really protect the juror's identity, the jury integrity. So good on them for catching this incident. In terms of the blurring, I think that is because they haven't charged this person with any crime, so there's really no reason to have his identity be public.
Yeah, I think at this point for James Morrison, he's pretty lucky that his friends and family aren't seeing his face, because at this point it's just a traffic ticket. Looks like Morrison might have just blown through a red light, if anything, but you're right, Dina, there's no real criminal charge there for James Morrison. Terry, does Judge Schroeder's ban on MSNBC now make more or less sense after you've seen this video?
It makes sense to me, Brian. This is a serious issue. If in fact there was any intent to tamper with the jury, I usually haven't been agreeing with Judge Schroeder's decisions, but here I think that he did make a good decision to ban that network. There are multiple considerations here. I mean, was it a traffic violation? Was it a breach of a court order? Or was it just a journalistic ethical breach? Either way, what the judge was trying to do was to protect the jury and also to protect the integrity of that actual trial. The last thing you want is for something to happen with the jury and to have a mistrial. So I think the judge made a good decision. He's setting a precedent here. He's trying to say to the media, look, you can go so far, but you can't go over the line. So all in all, I think it made a lot of sense. Speaking of over the line, Anjanette, you're a reporter who's covered high-profile cases. Is this how a producer like James Morrison should be chasing down stories?
No, not at all. You can get a good look. If you want to see what the jurors look like, you can look at them in the courtroom. And they had the opportunity to do that. Say you wanted to get a good look at them to try to approach them for an interview afterwards. But during a trial, stay away from the jurors. You're just asking for trouble. You can always approach them afterward. And in the video, as I mentioned, you saw that he had letters that the clerk of courts was going to give to the jurors after the verdict came in, saying, if you want to talk with me, here is my information. So there was really no need to chase them down like that. I think they were just trying to get a look at them and maybe try to approach them later for an interview.
All right, no reason to chase them down, James. Thank you very much, everyone. On to federal court in New York, where attorneys for British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell cross-examined one of her accusers. The victim, referred to only as Jane, told the jury Maxwell helped Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse her for 3 years, starting when she was 14. But on cross, Maxwell's lawyers questioned Jane's memory after she testified the socialite touched her breast. They say Jane previously told the government she couldn't remember whether Maxwell touched her. Jane also said she recalled meeting Prince Andrew and Donald Trump, but did not accuse them of wrongdoing. 3 more accusers are expected to testify. Maxwell maintains her innocence. Epstein died by suicide in 2019 while awaiting trial. Now to Minnesota, where the trial for ex-cop Kim Potter completed its second day of jury selection. As of Wednesday, 8 jurors, 4 men and 4 women, have been seated in the trial. 6 of the jurors are white, 1 is Asian, and 1 is black. In all, there will be 12 jurors with 2 alternates. Potter faces manslaughter charges for the shooting death of Dante Wright during a traffic stop just outside Minneapolis in April. Wright was being pulled over for an expired registration tag when officers determined he had an outstanding warrant. They attempted to take him into custody. Body camera footage shows Wright resisting when Potter warns him she will tase him. But instead of pulling out a stun gun, she pulls out her gun and shoots Wright in the chest. Wright, a black man, was unarmed at the time. Potter's defense argues the shooting death was an accident. Stay with Law&Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, prosecutors push to send Bill Cosby back to prison after his conviction was overturned. We hear directly from the actor and comedian spokesperson next. But first, a conservative majority in the Supreme Court could bring sweeping changes to abortion rights, as justices hear arguments which could overturn Roe v. Wade. Details in Washington still ahead.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law&Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law&Crime network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law&Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law&Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back. The U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments that could end in Roe v. Wade being overturned. The landmark case legalized abortion in 1973. Supreme Court justices ruled states cannot ban abortions before viability or when a fetus can survive outside of the womb. Viability is now considered between 22 and 24 weeks. Mississippi officials say scientific advances allow babies to survive earlier. Wednesday's arguments focus on a Mississippi law that bans abortions more than 15 weeks after conception. Last month, the Supreme Court heard arguments over a similar Texas law which bans abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. The court could issue rulings in both cases in June or July. Back to discuss Mississippi's challenge of Roe v. Wade is legal analyst Dina Dahl and Terry Austin. Terry, Mississippi seems to be arguing that an abortion at 24 weeks is too long and that it should be around 15 weeks. What's the heart of the argument here?
Well, that's exactly what they are arguing. They're saying that a woman's right to have an abortion should be narrowed from the 24 weeks that was established in Roe v. Wade, when the fetus is viable to the shorter 15 weeks, when actually some women may not even recognize the fact that they are pregnant. So the one thing about the argument is that the state's strategy changed to arguing for a complete overturn of Roe v. Wade. And Justice Roberts basically said that it was a switch and bait. He was very frustrated about the states changing their strategy. Notwithstanding that, Brian, it does look as though Chief Justice Roberts might lean in favor of narrowing it to 15 weeks. And there are other conservative judges who are going to probably rule in that way as well.
Dina, speaking of justices, Justice Sotomayor made a point that Mississippi said they made this law because the conservative state, that being Mississippi, said SCOTUS has, quote, new justices. What do you think of her point that SCOTUS shouldn't be controlled by politics?
I think she said the thing that all of us lawyers are thinking. You know, the Supreme Court is having a major PR image right now. It started with the decision in Bush v. Gore. It continued with the struggle with the nominations with Obama and Trump. And this particular case has many people fired up on both political sides. No matter what the legal foundation will be, with whatever their decision will be, the takeaway will be that this is political. And her point is right, that this will probably harm the reputation of the court if they decide to overturn Roe v. Wade, no matter how justified those conservative justices may feel in their decision.
We'll see how the decision comes up, and when it does, we'll be sure to report it here on Law and Crime Daily. At the Supreme Court, prosecutors want justices to reinstate the sexual assault conviction for comedian Bill Cosby. Back in June, Cosby was released from prison when his conviction was overturned. The ruling was based on a verbal immunity agreement made in 2005 that Cosby would not face charges when a woman claimed he had drugged and sexually assaulted her. But in 2015, the actor was arrested after the original investigation was dropped and a settlement had been reached between the woman and Cosby. Prosecutors now say Supreme Court justices should throw out that ruling, arguing the overturned conviction was made over a questionable agreement. Law and Crime's Angela Levy sat down with Cosby's spokesperson, who says Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin Steele has an obsession with the case.
It was shocking. It just shows that this district attorney, Kevin Steele, has a true obsession. It's a true crime obsession, believe it or not, with Mr. Cosby. This is the same district attorney who ran the Willie Horton campaign ad saying, if you elect me, I will bring Bill Cosby to justice, when he knew that Mr. Cosby had a deal. Mr. Cosby waived his Fifth Amendment rights, settled out of court for $3.8 million with Andrea Constant, never to be charged. And this guy became an overzealous prosecutor. And, you know, he's a detriment not only to Montgomery County, but his constituents.
Coming up, the prosecution builds its case in the New Hampshire versus William Argie murder trial. Plus, another student dies after a tragic shooting at a high school in Michigan. What authorities have learned in their investigation so far? Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. In day 3 of New Hampshire versus William Bill Argie, first responders told the jury how Argie reacted to the news that his wife was dead. Prosecutors say 46-year-old Argie killed his wife Maureen back in 2019. They say he strangled or suffocated her. After that, they say he attempted suicide, ran off, and gambled at a casino. Argie's defense maintains his wife committed suicide and that he found her in bed with a sheet around her neck. Argie was the sole beneficiary of his wife's $400,000 life insurance policy. On Wednesday, witnesses for the prosecution took the stand, including the officer who told Argie his wife had been killed.
When you first met with the defendant, did you tell him that his wife was dead?
I did.
And what was the defendant's reaction when you told him that his wife was dead?
There was no verbal or emotional response. He just looked at me with really no response at all.
According to the defendant, who had discussed or who had been discussing divorce?
Initially, he had brought up divorce back in 2015, 2016. They seemingly had worked through those issues, and more recently, Maureen had brought up that she wanted a divorce.
Says legal analyst Dina Dahl and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, what do you think about the officer's explanation as to when he gave Argy his Miranda warnings?
I think the officer actually gave a very good explanation. He said he was being cautious. He actually met with the defendant in the hospital, and he was brought to the hospital while he was with the police. So I think the officer was trying to say that he wanted to make sure that the defendant did not think he was in custody there, and he didn't want the defendant to incriminate himself. He wanted to make sure that he understood all his rights. He wasn't under arrest, but he provided him with the Miranda rights just so at the end of the day, that interview would not be questioned at any point in time. So I thought it was a good move.
Makes sense, dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Dina, what do you make of Argy's reaction to his wife's death, and how will either side argue it?
You know, the defendant said that he untied his wife because he didn't want the children to see her like that. And then he went to this casino. The judge ruled that his fleeing the scene and going to the casino can be used as evidence for mens rea, for intent, which is very strong for the prosecution.
All right, we'll see how the prosecution uses that information. Of course, this is their witness, so obviously they think it's a benefit to them. But thank you both for your input. When we come back, a 15-year-old suspect behind bars in the Oxford, Michigan school shooting. We bring you the latest on the deadly shooting as authorities search for a motive. Welcome back. New videos released showing dozens of hours of interviews in the Andrew Cuomo sex crimes investigation. On Monday, the New York Attorney General's office released transcripts and video interviews to the public from an investigation that wrapped up in August. The video dump comes 1 month after a criminal complaint was filed against the former New York governor on charges of sexual misconduct. Nearly a dozen women, both current and former employees of the state, have accused Cuomo of sexual harassment. Independent investigators appointed by New York Attorney General say Cuomo did harass multiple women. Hours of video testimony show Cuomo's reaction to the investigation, as he denied any wrongdoing and said the alleged actions could be based on perception.
There was never a suggestion that I wanted to date Charlotte. All right? I mean, just think about it. That was never the concept of grooming. Nothing happened, but I felt like we were on a path to something maybe happening. She felt that way. I understand that, I respect it. But this is all her perception, right?
Cuomo resigned as governor in August after a decade in office. He is now facing a misdemeanor sex crime complaint that alleges he forcibly touched a woman last December. The latest now on a school shooting in Michigan. A fourth victim has now succumbed to their injuries. The shooting happened Tuesday afternoon at Oxford High School, about 45 minutes outside of Detroit. 3 students were killed and several more injured. The fourth victim died on Wednesday. Investigators say they are still trying to determine a motive for the 15-year-old sophomore who opened fire at his high school. Deputies arrested the shooting suspect within minutes of arriving at the school in response to a flood of 911 calls. Investigators revealed that his father purchased the gun just days before the shooting on Black Friday. In a press conference, the Oakland County Sheriff praised the quick emergency response time.
One of our deputies, because of the severity of wounds, loaded up one of the children in his car, and sadly that child died in the car. One of our employees who was in the 911 center as part of the team taking the emergency calls had a relative killed in the attack. And so this touches us all personally and deeply, and will for a long time. This wound will never go away, and we understand that. But we also want the community to know that we're here for them, and we will leave no stone unturned in determining all the things that led up to it and making sure that this investigation is full and complete.
Dina, what do you think the investigation to a mass shooting like this in Michigan will look like?
I mean, there's already quite a bit that they know. I mean, this tragedy, occurred with these students who were vulnerable and they saw this shooter. This shooter has been arrested. It's true that his parents aren't allowing him to be questioned by police, but there's already quite a bit that the police know. They know the gun that was used and it was purchased by his father. So, in terms of the investigation, there may be a little bit more that they can find out in terms of motive, but they certainly already have enough information.
Absolutely, especially enough to at least go forward with some initial charges. Terry, he's just a high school sophomore, but what is the prosecution against this teen going to look like? And could the boy's father face charges too?
Absolutely. The prosecutor is going after this with full force, charging him as an adult. And they stated the reason they're charging as an adult is because the crime was so serious. It was not an impulsive act. And so the end of the day, they shot 11 and killed 4. And so the fact is the parents could very well be brought in. You know that the parents you mentioned, Brian, bought the gun just very recently. They didn't protect the gun from their son. One of the things I'll also say is during the arraignment, they came on Zoom and they wore baseball caps. To me, that is a sign of disrespect. It does not seem as though they are cooperating with the authorities. And based on all of that, I do think that if the prosecution can find enough information against the parents, they too will be charged.
Yeah, like you said, not having proper protections for the gun, that could be a charge in itself. But thank you, Dina and Terry. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.